And welcome everybody to tonight's Rochester SABR chapter and Rochester Baseball Historical Society meeting. This is a Meet the Nationals meeting in celebration of the anticipated new affiliation of the Red Wings with the Washington Nationals. Tonight we have three guests with us. We have Luke Erickson, who is the owner and writer of nationalsprospects.com. We have Byron Kerr, most recently of MASN.com, before they decided to somehow cover sports without any people to cover them, which could be a whole nother meeting on its own. And then we also have Britt Ghiroli from the Athletic, who had recently been on covering the Washington Nationals for the Athletic, and recently got promoted to a National Major League Baseball writer within the last week or two. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and hopefully have a fun time talking about the Nationals. For some procedural stuff, if you're not Brittany, Byron, or Luke, if you could mute your microphone, that would be greatly appreciated, just so we don't get a lot of extra background noise. We are recording the session tonight, so if you have objections to your picture potentially popping up on screen, just turn off your camera. And general format we're going to use tonight is we're going to have roughly 3 sections with our panelists talking. First is going to be kind of a general introduction to the Nationals and their philosophies and minor league system. Middle section will be on the Nationals' top prospects. And then the last section will be on some players that we can anticipate potentially seeing in Rochester this year. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Luke, Byron, and Britt. And can you tell us a little bit about the Nationals minor league philosophy and minor league system?
Okay, I can start. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's nice to see everyone, and an exciting moment here for the Nationals to be in Rochester. I know that they are very excited to be on the Eastern Seaboard again after being in Fresno 2 years ago now. And as Britt knows and as Luke knows, and I'm not regurgitating this because they know, but as many baseball teams are designed, this baseball team is designed in Mike Rizzo's ideas of pitching and catching as the most important part. So you'll see, as you do right now in their top 10, how important pitching is to their minor league system. Catching has always been very, very important. And, if you go back on the history of the Nationals, they picked the 2 best years to be the worst team in Major League Baseball when they got Bryce Harper and Steven Strasburg. And that kind of set things in motion. And then, as Jim Callis always used to tell me, then they got Anthony Rendon, and he called that the 3 best draft picks in a row that he had seen in quite some time. And way back when that happened in 2009, 2010 or so, you think, okay, that'd be great. And it turned out to be great because all 3 of those guys, in one way or another, were a part of what happened to the Nationals over the years. Obviously, Bryce Harper moved on to the Phillies, but then Anthony Rendon and Steven Strasburg were 2 gigantic heroes in the World Series of 2019 and how good they became. So if you look at the system right now, obviously they would love to have better prospects in the infield, better prospects in the outfield. That's certainly something that they are working on. But the basic philosophy is pitching and catching, and you see that all through their top 30.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, the Rizzo philosophy seems to be draft big guys who throw hard, and eventually they'll have some kind of trade value. And you've seen that with the Nats over the last few years. In particular, they've traded away guys who throw hard and who are project to be, high velocity guys. And the idea there, similar to what Byron said, is that's what Mike Rizzo believes in. He believes in pitching first and foremost, and they've used that as a currency. You saw it, with Lucas Giolito, and people get mad about that trade now, but they don't win the World Series without Adam Eaton. You see it when they trade a kid like Luzardo to Oakland. I mean, these are moves. These are kids who they drafted because they fell in love with that velo and that potential. And you see it right now with Cade Cavalli and Jackson Rutledge, 2 of their top 2 prospects. So the Nationals, if there was a knock for me, it's the fact that they don't develop that pitching when they get it outside of Steven Strasburg, when was the last time you saw a homegrown starter become that frontline guy? They go out and buy the Scherzers and the Corbins of the world, and that's great. But I think if there's one knock on what they've been able to do, it's they haven't been able to turn those 8th through 12th round guys into some kind of a find. And I think that's where they really need to get better, especially as we're approaching the end of that window that's kind of closing. If they're going to avoid the rebuild, you have to get lucky in those later rounds.
How about Jordan Zimmerman?
He's the last one. He's 12 years ago. So if that's your last successful guy that you've turned around, it's kind of a long time ago, right? So that's really it. When you look at this organization, and I've heard from other organizations that they don't have the best reputation at developing pitchers. Part of that is some of the long toss program. Part of that is the strength program that goes with it. They seem to be a little bit behind in developing pitchers. No one that they draft gets better, markedly better from what they were projected to be in DC system.
And I'll just throw in one thing that frustrates a lot of people is the Nationals like to draft. They like to draft collegiate players with a high floor, and they like to get their teenage talent from the Dominican Republic. So we'll get a lot of people complaining about high school players, and when I did the notes, I counted 5, as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players that are high school players that are currently in system. It's very few and far between. So, for example, I'm not sure if I'm counting Sandy Infante, but as I wrote up recently in one of my things, it's like the only thing more rare than a high school pick is one that signs. So that's their philosophy. Their philosophy is to get teenage talent from the Dominican Republic and Venezuela, and they like to get guys with very high floors from the collegiate ranks.
And to Luke's point, a couple of years ago when I was talking to coordinators in the system, they actually had, I think it was 2018 or 2017, more Latino players in the minor league system than they had American players. That gives you an idea of how valuable they believe that Dominican and Venezuela and other countries are to building up their depth in the minor league system.
Yeah, I was shocked when I was looking through the list at how many of the position player prospects were, very young Latin American players.
And they're excited about Yasiel Antuna. Obviously, they are excited about Luis Garcia, and Victor Robles and Juan Soto, the outfielders that they were able to get over the years. They have done a really nice job of scouting Dominican, and Johnny DePuglia runs that show. And the big scout down there, Modesto Ulua, is the one that found Juan Soto. And then they got another guy this year, Armando Cruz, a shortstop that is supposed to be absolutely ridiculous. So it just gives you an idea, as Luke said and Brittany said, how important that is to their minor league system, and what kind of success they've had. And a lot of teams didn't go to those places to find players over the years. And I think the Nationals have found a good niche there, and they have some good communication with people on the ground in the Dominican to make sure that they get these good players. And their academy there, it does a really, really nice job of helping these students not only work on baseball, but also work on, scholastic work as well. And then when they get to the United States is how hard they work on Rosetta Stone to try to learn the English language too, and get processed into playing American baseball and hit the ground running.
That academy down there had a setback years ago when Bowden was the general manager. There was some sort of scandal with players with wrong ages,
Yeah,
and that set them back a couple of years, but they certainly made a good comeback since then.
Yeah, I think DePuglia is probably one of the most underrated people in that organization. When you say Byron, I mean, he consistently is able to come up with talent, and like you said, they were the laughing stock of the league for a few years there. And what they've been able to do, and I think he's now the director of international scouting, Johnny's able to do there, forming these relationships with these kids, keeping tabs on them. I mean, a lot of times these signings are the culmination of years. Yeah. They're not just like, hey, I saw him at a showcase. It's much different down there. It's a much different scenario. And I think when you look at someone like Juan Soto, he almost went to the Padres. That was like the next team. Can you imagine the Padres with Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis right now? Like, are you serious?
Well, I think that's an amazing point, Britt, is how incredible they've been able to pull this off. You know, there's got to be a Moneyball type movie for the Dominican, because there are so many scouts down there. There's like you said, there's good scouts and there's some nefarious stuff going on that you don't know, you know, who's good and who's not. And because Johnny DePuglia and the Nat staff have worked so hard over the years in establishing, as you said, these are, you know, 10, 15-year relationships. After Smiley Gonzalez, as the Rochester fan just talked about, after they clean that up and fix that, Johnny really changed, you know, the perception of how the Nationals are looked at down there. And they don't mess around with how they, you know, take care of these kids and how they kind of, you know, look at to see what they can do in the future. And you know, I love, as Britt does too, we love talking to Johnny. He's so funny. I don't know if you saw that Major League Baseball Network interview where he said, you know, he had Juan Soto and Victor Robles, and he was a verbal agreement with Ronald Acuna or something like that. And then Acuna said, I want a little bit more money, and DePuglia balked, and then, you know, he signed with Atlanta. So it could have gone the other way. Instead of Soto going to San Diego, the Nationals could have had those three guys. That would have been absolutely ridiculous. But it just gives you an idea of, you know, the kind of relationship he has in the Dominican, what he's been able to do.
You know, speaking of Victor Robles, he was the #1 prospect, and he would have been the one that came up, but he dove for a ball in minor league and he broke his shoulder or something, and Soto was the next guy in line. Soto came up. So it was, who knows what would have happened otherwise.
I don't know if Byron, you were there for that week that Juan Soto was in Potomac. And I say it like that because I think he only spent like 20-something games. But in that week that I saw him, he homered 5 times. And it just was, you know, one of the things I tell people when I was a season ticket holder for the Potomac, is like the guys that are going to be major leaguers, there's usually, you know, it's like, is this guy going to be made at high A? It's very obvious who the major leaguers are. You saw it with Hosmer, you saw it with Will Myers, you definitely saw it with Juan Soto. They're just a cut above, and you can see it right away.
Yeah, you always talk about guys moving from AA to the majors. Juan Soto pretty much went from single A to the majors. So yeah, it's pretty impressive stuff, what he's been able to do. And you know, that's their biggest find so far. So now, as Johnny jokes, Luke, that, you know, now the pressure's on to find that next guy. And then, you know, there may never be another Juan Soto. That was an amazing pick.
Yeah. While we're talking about some of the members of the Nationals front office, I'm going to share a screen here. Hopefully people can see this. This is kind of a little bit of the organizational chart for some of the players that'll affect who we see and what we see in Rochester. I know you guys have talked about Mike Rizzo a little bit. Any comments on what we can expect from any of these other front office members?
Yeah, I've had a really good relationship with Mark Schlaba. You know, Doug Harris has been through so much. He's had cancer 3 times, and he is a complete warrior. I always give a hat tip to Doug Harris of what he's able to do, establishing the minor league system for the Nats for many, many years. And Mark Schlaba has moved up to player development, the assistant general manager. And so, you know, he's a guy that Rochester fans will see a lot of at the stadium. He'll go to every affiliate and watch games, and he's really easy to talk to, and so go over and say hi when you see him. He's the one to watch. And Chris Klein, you see a lot of, came over, I think, from the Atlanta Braves, and with Rizzo, and he's kind of the guy. That picture right there is actually from the press box at Nats Park, talking about the draft picks from some particular year. And Ryan Thomas, I don't know him as well. Britt maybe can speak, or Luke, but he obviously is very, very valuable to the system that they have set up, and how important scouting is and analytics is, and that draft room. I mean, that, you know, that's one of the big reasons why they've been able to get some of these guys over the years, is the way they pick them and select the right ones at the right times.
Yeah, so you did a great job going through all them all. I'll just say this. This group very much resembles what is Mike Rizzo's ideal. They are close to the vest. They are friendly but secretive. I had a friend who's been in baseball forever say that the scouting director he knows the least is in the Nationals, is Chris Klein. He's like, I have no relationship with that guy. And that would make Mike Rizzo so happy, right?
Yeah, that's
Rizzo
funny.
is, I wrote on The Athletic today, we did an agent survey. We spoke to 23 agents and a lot of the stuff didn't make it in there. But what's fascinating is a lot of assistant GMs now negotiate contracts for players, which I didn't realize.
Hmm.
That's not the case with the Nationals. Mike Rizzo still does a good majority of it, and that should surprise no one. He's got a hand in the draft. He always is very involved in what they do, and he's more of that hands-on GM. He still travels with the team. So this group to me is an extension of Mike Rizzo and of his philosophies. And that's the reason why, frustratingly for us as reporters, nothing really seems to leak out about them, because Mike Rizzo employs people who are very similar, have similar philosophies that he does.
And very loyal, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. So for the on-field manager and coaches for the Red Wings, I don't know if anything's official with that yet. I believe it was the Washington Post that reported that Matt LaCroix was going to be our manager. Do we have any idea as to who, if you guys could talk about Matt LaCroix a little bit, and if we have any idea who his coaching staff might be?
Yeah, Luke, do you want to, or?
I was there when Matt LaCroix. He is a tough, no nonsense manager. I'm not sure he'll do it at the AAA level, but he was not afraid, and I'm including Victor Robles, to bench anybody that wouldn't run out a fly ball. That was he was famous for it.
Yes.
And so he's a disciplinarian. I don't know who he's gonna want for his pitching coach and player development, if he's going to get his guys back. It's kind of in flux. I'd be relying on the likes of you and Byron to know that information.
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead,
when I got ready for this Zoom, I was thinking, I haven't seen any of these guys in about 15 months, Britt and Luke. I mean, it's like,
I know.
Some of the names that you had put in the list of guys, I'm like, some of these guys I haven't seen, but Brian Daubach was a hitting coach, and set to be. Michael Tejera was set to be the pitching coach. I don't know if any of that has been said, but Luke's right about Matt LaCroix. He's going to be a lot of fun to kind of get back into being a manager. He was supposed to be a quality control coordinator, something like that for them. So for him to take on the reins as the AAA manager is going to be exciting, because he's certainly going to be fun to watch, and he's going to get these guys ready. That's what's interesting and exciting, is all the Rochester fans know about AAA is it's guys going up, but it's also guys that are just there as insurance policies whose careers are waning down. So you have to mesh a lot of different personalities, be the Ted Lasso of Rochester or whatever, to make it work. So I'm really excited to see LaCroix in Rochester.
Of course, it'll be a return for LaCroix, as he played here in 2006, I think it was. And interestingly, Doug Harris also played in Rochester in 1996. He was with us for a part of that season.
That's cool. That's cool.
So a couple of fun connections there. So for our second part, what we were going to do was have our three guests draft Nationals prospects. Before we get into that, can you guys talk a little bit about how difficult 2020's made it in getting information about prospects, determining development, and things along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a huge story with, Saris and Melissa Lockard who does a lot of the A's and Giants prospects, and we must have called 30 people between the three of us, and there were a few themes. One, the alternate site was not even close to what a regular game is. Two, the issue now is usually when you draft a college kid, you give them 3 to 4 years to get to the big leagues, 4 to 5 years for a high school kid. Now you're not sure. Did that year count? Did it not count? What are you doing with guys who probably should be at AA? It's really tough right now for organizations and coordinators to determine who starts at what level. What do you do with your pitchers? What kind of innings limit do you keep on these guys? So it seems like it was like a lost year in so many regards. And yes, they were able to get some instruction from the alternate site, but not all the guys were there. It was a totally different scenario. I talked to a catcher who said he would spend an hour working with the pitchers and then he'd get in there and try to face them. I mean, it's just a totally different dynamic. And I think that makes it really tough. Like Byron said, I had to also look up a lot of these names. I'm like, how'd that guy do? Where's that guy at? oh, they traded that guy. I forgot about that. Because it's almost like last year didn't exist. There was no minor league season.
And if I'm not mistaken, the Nats were one of 10 teams that would not share a video feed with the other teams. I believe there were 10 other teams. I know the Yankees and the Red Sox were among them. So that makes it even hard for anyone to have seen them outside of the organization. So you might not find out from the Nats, but you might find out from a scout from another organization who's willing to talk off the record. So we have no idea what happened there other than what people are willing to talk about. And as you both noted, the Nats are very tight-lipped. They make Bill Belichick look talkative.
Yeah. And like as you said with the data, that is true. And the scouts were not allowed to be at these sites. So there were cases of scouts sneaking in, I was told, but by and large, you couldn't even call up another team and find out. And that's part of the reason the Nats didn't make a trade at the deadline. It's because they just didn't simply have that data. Mike Rizzo didn't feel comfortable pulling the trigger because they weren't comfortable trading their prospects or getting prospects back.
Yeah,
basically, from what I'm told, that's what it's like trading when you're in the independent level. You're basically given a stat sheet, and maybe you make 1 or 2 phone calls, and that's maybe enough at the Indies, but not at the major league level.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to several coordinators in the last few months, whether it's Gary Thurman in the outfield or whether it's Michael Barrett, the catching, Mark Schlaba, the player development. And the theme that you guys keep reiterating is they need games desperately. These players need actual baseball games because this alternate site stuff, even in the instructional league, they tried to play games against the Marlins and it rained the whole month of October in West Palm Beach. So I think they got 5 or 6 games in. They're desperate to see these guys play in games. And Britt's right. A lot of these guys are getting a little bit older. You know, you look at the instructional league of a 24-year-old outfielder, you know, they have to see these guys play because if they don't, there's going to be this huge backlog of a situation where they're going to have so many younger guys that are not going to be able to get them all to play. There is no more Auburn, obviously. There's no more Hagerstown. So these rosters are going to be a little bit different at single A and double A now. And does that mean that Rochester is going to see more double A guys being into the triple A? It'll be an interesting dynamic to see how these rosters play out because you know, one thing that they have to get in this year is more games because that not being able to play games at all really hurt not only the national but a lot of major league teams. I mean, Gary Thurman, who played for the Royals as an outfielder, and you guys probably remember him. He said that him and Jeff Garber had to play outfield because they didn't have enough players at the alternate site because, as Britt talked about, they can't have that many players there. So they had times where they had to go shag balls during the game because, you know, they didn't have enough infield outfielders. They had a ton of pitchers, obviously, and a ton of catchers. But, you know, that's what's important, I think, is, and hopefully with the vaccine and everything, they can get games in because that's what these players need.
I'd like to answer the Mike Faber's question because it brings up a point that with the new consolidation of the minor leagues, there's supposedly a 180 player limit outside of the Dominican Republic. So what we don't know is how is that going to break down? There's obviously 4 full season teams. Does that mean, for example, that there'll be 2 golf club, GCL or ACL teams, or whatever they're renamed as? That's another story for another day. So that's a big question I'm curious about going into this season is how are they going to break things down? I don't know. Or are they just going to have more New York Penn League style rosters where there's 30 people on the roster and 25 available on any night? I don't know. And obviously the 180 is going to include people on the DL, but that's a new development too, because, you know, you had some organizations that had as many as 9 affiliates. And they were just going for volume, and now everybody's on that same level thing of 180, which I'm not. You know, I don't know. I disagree. You know, I've been disagreeing with the consolidation of the minors from the get go, but it is what it is, and we can't change that. It's not ours, even though I think it's penny wise and pound foolish.
That's what makes me think is West Palm Beach going to be this extended spring training for the whole season? You know, are they going to have to put players in West Palm Beach because they don't have a roster available for them? I tried to get some of those coordinators to tell me that or player development, but I don't think they even know. how they're gonna be able to, as you said, look, put each player on the roster. But it feels to me like if you don't have your alternate site in 2021, then West Palm Beach will be your alternate site, and you're going to have a lot of guys that are going to be kind of placed in a way station there before they get an assignment to go to different places.
All right. Well, maybe we'll move ahead and get to our draft here. So pretty much how I envision this is we'll just have we'll go in alphabetical order by first name. So we'll have Brittany pick first, then Byron, then Luke. You can take a player off the board. You're not stuck with this board if there's somebody else you want to take. But this was my best guess for a rough top 25 of the Nats system. And you can select a player. We'll talk about him for 30 to 45 seconds, whatever, and then go on to the next pick and maybe see if we can get 4 or 5 rounds in.
Okay, I'm going to take Cade Cavalli. Everyone here is probably familiar with him. He was their last #1 pick. They really like his athleticism. As we said, big kids who can throw hard. This is like 110% Mike Rizzo in the Nationals wheelhouse. A kid who projects to be kind of a mid-rotation guy. Maybe there's a little more upside there. The injuries have been certainly a little bit of an issue, and I think that's the reason why they were able to even get him at 22.
Great pick.
Yeah, where do you think he'll start the year, and when would you think would be reasonable that he might hit AAA?
I can't predict where he's going to start because, like I said, I don't think anyone has any idea. If in a normal year, I would love to predict. I don't feel comfortable predicting where any of these guys are going to start. I think you might see him at some point in 2021 or 2022 for sure. Maybe he's the guy who comes up for the bullpen. I don't know, but I have no clue where any of these guys are going to start.
No, and that's certainly fair enough. All right, Byron, who do you have?
Well, obviously, at the top of the list, Jackson Rutledge is outstanding, and he's the #1 overall prospect for them. And this is a guy with that strong arm, that frame that Britt talked about. This is what Mike loves in his big time throwers. A guy who's 6'8", 250 pounds, and he projects, I guess, 2022, but that seems a little bit early for me, only because of what happened with COVID and how they lost a whole year. But it's going to be fun to see him play, and hopefully we cross our fingers we get to see him play because he's got all the tools that they want, and he seems to be getting stronger with each time. All the reports I get, they really love what they see from Jackson. And where do I think he would play? Gosh, I would probably think they would, hopefully, if there is no, there is no Auburn or anything like that, so they couldn't do anything like that. So probably with Fredericksburg being the low A, I would imagine, he would start there if they want to do it that way.
Right. All right, Luke, you're up.
I would take Andrew Lara. We don't know a heck of a lot about this much. He's a young guy. As you can see, I had him at 6'4". He's probably up to 6'5" by now. Throws hard. Is still, as one of the fans I used to hang out with would say, he's still growing into his man body. And to make Britt's point, she is right. They like him with a sturdy carriage. They like him big, in the shoulders, big in the rear. They like them big and strong. And so there is an archetype. 20 years ago, they would have been, the usual 6'3", 190, but now it seems like everybody's at least 220. But I would pick him because he's got a lot of upside and he's just, so young.
Yeah. I'm ready for my pick. I'm going to go Cole Henry, who, again, it seems like we keep talking about the same guy over and over. This is a big, strong pitcher. He's, I think, 210 plus pounds, listed at 6'4". I mean, he was their second round pick this year behind Cade Cavalli. And again, they like his upside. He did miss that time. The biggest issue and why they were able to get him is he's been inconsistent. And I think if they can find a way to get the delivery more consistent, get the results there, he's another guy who projects to be in the big leagues relatively quickly. You know, that's a good program, LSU. You constantly see guys get drafted out of there. Kevin Gossman is one I could think of off the top of my head that I dealt with directly. And they talked about being those Friday night starters and being ready to pitch because of how those games are treated down there. And I think that does help translate into some of these minor league starts, into some of this, you know, hype that comes with being a prospect. So as I said early on, I'm not guessing where they're going to be, but he is going to be my second round pick here.
Excellent. So you like the Nats 2020 draft, it looks like.
Right.
All right, Byron, you're up.
All right, I'm going to go off the board here with Armando Cruz because we're not talking about him yet. He's probably too young to talk about, but just so exciting to hear Johnny talk about him. And when I wrote the article, Johnny was racing to the airport, so he was so nice to talk to me about Armando. And he mentioned so many times when he decides and when the team decides on getting these hotshot young teenagers that after they give them the big signing bonus, you know, they have buyer's remorse because they look at him and they're not as good as they were the last time they saw him. He says every time he saw Armando play, he was better the next time he saw him. So he felt really, really good about getting a player like this. And you can see from a lot of that video there that he has unbelievable glove and incredible range. And, you know, he's got the quick twitch that they like. And so he's got a long way to go, obviously, because he's so young. He just turned 17 at the beginning of the month. So, you know, he's a baby and it's going to be, you know, a rookie level competition or summer league stuff for him. But that's the next hot shot player that they want to see, you know, be the Trey Turner substitution a few years down the road because they love what they see from Armando Cruz.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, Luke, I suspect you would have taken Cruz if he were available, but yet he's off the board.
I would have taken Cruz if he were available. I'm going to go up the next one up to Juan Soto Jr., also known as Jeremy De La Rosa. And he's another young one. They make that comparison because he has advanced pitch recognition for someone who's only 18 years old. This is a kid that was in the GCL at the age of 17. And so the last time that happened was a kid by the name of Juan Soto. He took about 6 weeks to get going that particular summer. It was to the point where people were starting to worry that the Nats will sometimes challenge their top-rate IFAs and send them stateside instead of keeping them in the Dominican Republic. And that's a good example of well, what's going to happen this year? Are they going to have more teams in the DSL? Are they going to have more teams in the GCL? So some of like Armando Cruz, you might have seen in the GCL under the old system. I think this year we'll see him in Dominican. As for Mr. De La Rosa, I have a feeling he'll be back in the GCL because, as Byron noted, they still have a lot of guys in front of him. And because he's only 18, I think they'd rather keep him in a controlled environment than throw him to the Wolves in the full season ball.
Great.
I'm going to go Drew Mendoza next. Kind of keep my consistent, could be in the big leagues in a couple of years type of thing. You know, he's their next, as it says there, probably their next first baseman win, maybe as early as 2022. You know, you got Zimmerman signed for one more year. I think he's going to kind of be their next kind of position guy that you hear about here. I noticed Garcia is still on that list, but, you know, they've graduated Carter Kieboom. You saw Garcia play last year in the majors. This is a guy who's got about 70 power. You noted the good eye at the plate as well. He's a guy that they really like. And this is an organization, as we mentioned in the intro, that really doesn't have too much of an identity here in terms of the non-Latin prospects that are positionally in their system. You don't really feel too good about a lot of those guys now that they have Garcia and Kieboom pretty much theoretically graduated from this group. Mendoza's probably that next guy. And again, I think you could probably see him maybe even as early as next year.
Very cool. All
So
right,
something.
Yasiel Antuna is going to be a lot of fun to watch as he gets going. Maybe not a power bat, but as a switch hitter, he can do a lot. And they've been really, really impressed with the way that he has been short to the ball. And, you know, he got a chance to be in a Fredericksburg guy. So he got a chance to be at the alternate site. And as a youngster growing up, 21 years of age, to get that chance to be with big leaguers. I heard that time and time again when I talked to these coordinators, when Israel Pineda, catcher, or when Antuna got the chance to be with it. That's going to be the one good thing that's going to come out of this for teams, especially the Nationals, is that they were able to mix some hotshot young prospects in with major league players at the alternate site. And they love the way, Luke probably gets this all the time. Britt gets this all the time. The way the ball sounds when it hits his bat is different than it is for other players. And that's a good sign. They love the way it sounds for Yasiel Antuna. So it's going to be fun to watch it wherever he plays, if he can stay healthy.
All right, well, if it's my turn, I think I'll take a page out of Britt's handbook, and I'm going to pick on, apparently, when my wife and I were having children, I said no soap opera names, but well, didn't happen with Holden Powell. I think the reason I would pick him is because I think this is a guy who could pull a Coda Glover and be up in the majors, within a very short period of time. He's profiled pretty much as a reliever only. What he has is a low 90s fastball, but apparently he has a wipeout slider that's as good as Aaron Barrett's. And I obviously haven't seen it. I'm not much, problem in the college season. It's going on while I'm paying attention to the Nets in spring training. And then by the time it really gets going, next thing you know, it's the minors. And so I don't really follow college baseball as closely as some other folks do. But from what I have read, it seems like this is a guy that could come in and rise very quickly.
I'm going to go. Oh, you do have Carter Kieboom on here too, huh? So we're
I
counting.
did. I gave Kieboom and Garcia on there. I figured they didn't, Kieboom in particular didn't show enough up there to guarantee a spot. I didn't think so.
I mean, so I guess maybe I'll change my picks because we're getting to guys that haven't even been to the show yet. So maybe I guess I can take, I'll take Garcia. Carter Kieboom has, to me, really looked low energy and just kind of disappointing overall. But Garcia was the opposite. I think people had him behind Kieboom in the pecking order, and he overperformed what they expected. Coming up after Starlin Castro broke his wrist, was out for the year. As it notes there, they needed him at second base, and he held his own. And I think what was most impressive, and what I know Davey Martinez really liked, is that offensively he didn't seem overwhelmed. They thought they were going to get a kid who would make the plays in the field and take what they could get. They were really pretty impressed with the walks. That he collected a lot of walks. I think Byron asked about this one day, and he really had these mature at bats for someone that was at the time, I believe, the youngest player in MLB. So I'm going to go with him. We've talked a lot about the Nationals infield. They were the worst in baseball in WAR outside of shortstop, which is obviously where Trey Turner is. So they're going to have to get better. But I think for Luis Garcia last year was just gravy. They weren't expecting anything. And now he's going to take that experience, whether he starts in AAA or not, or is with the big league team, he's going to be better for this. We talk about guys who didn't develop. Well, Luis Garcia got to play in the big leagues. So to me, he was somebody who actually won from 2020, and that's rare to say.
Excellent.
I mean, when we see Carter Kieboom on there, I'm like, we're sleeping on the guy that's going to start.
How did he last to the fourth round?
Yeah. So, gosh, it's between him and Mason Denneberg. I'm sure you guys have seen Carter. So I'll talk about Mason. He's trying to get his shoulder back to full strength. And that's what this whole entire summer was. He worked out in Orlando. The strength and conditioning coach for the Nationals worked with him to get that strength back. They said his fastball was 90 to 92. So that's not jumping out and getting everybody all excited. But I think, this is, if we're going to talk upside and trying to be healthy and with the tools that he has, Luke talked about high school players. He's still growing up. He's still young. So they're going to bank on that, get him fully healthy and see what he can do. Watch him start some games. I'm going to be excited to see what Mason Denneberg can do this year.
Excellent. And he was a bit of a viral video after he got drafted when he surprised his parents by paying off their mortgage and some other loans with a
He's a really good kid. And a lot of times when I interview these guys, you can you can tell the ones that are like, oh, I expected to be here, but you could see how important Mason's family was to him. So that, yeah, that's a really special moment that he was able to pull it, do that for them.
All right, back to you, Luke.
I'm going to go on pure potential. Now, I know this is Seth Romero, and I know a lot of people are going to have some complaints about, you know, he's had his problems. He's had his you know, with between breaking team rules and what have you. But I think you got to understand some people grow up faster than others. And I think because everything I've read and, you know, the few times I have seen him, I can understand why people are very high on him. He has a lot of potential. And, you know, anytime you can find a left-hander that can throw hard, you know, it's going to catch your eye. So that's who I take.
Perfect. All right, let's go one more round. So this will be your fifth and final pick, Britt.
Seth Romero was a good pick. I was going to go there. I'm going to go Carter Kieboom. The one thing I will say about Mason Denenberg is it's interesting how far he's fallen, and that it took us to the fourth round for someone.
Well, for us, you know, they still have him number 5, but you know.
I know, but it is still fascinating to see what an injury can do to kind of your prospect stock. Carter Kieboom, a guy who, when he first came up, a lot of scouts were like, this guy's going to have to play first base. And obviously he's not. He's played a little shortstop when Trey Turner was hurt 2 years ago, and then third base this year. The main issue to me is that one that's primarily not his fault. He has very limited reps at third base. And to me, that's a big oversight by the Nats. They knew Trey Turner was going to be there. Why not move him over sooner? You know, it almost seems like they kind of put him behind the 8 ball. But he was always advertised as this bat. And we're able to see this bat this season. And you look at that line, and as we said with Garcia overperforming, Carter Kieboom underperformed. And when I think what made me the most kind of hesitant in, all right, is this guy going to be the answer, was the energy with which he played with. He just didn't really have a whole lot of energy, very low energy player. A lot of scouts who saw him were like, this guy is, you know, not going to be that corner bat, that, you know, that corner spot that's a power hitting third baseman. He's just not going to be that. So you do wonder, do the Nationals trade him? Because he's been made available. Certainly it's a case where they'd have to trade him low. But he was their guy for, you know, even last year, he was untouchable. He was their top position player prospect. So there is still that potential there, but certainly a guy who, if we were going to do arrows for some of these guys, right? You know, maybe Seth Romero pointing up, Carter Kieboom would be pointing down, definitely heading into the spring training.
All right, I'm being biased here because it was my final article at MADSonSports.com. It was Israel Pineda, this catcher that Michael Barrett told me about. And, you know, obviously Venezuela.
I didn't make a cheat for him.
Yeah, Venezuela has been known for catchers for so many years. And this is another one that they are excited about. Pineda also got to go to the alternate site. And as you'll read that was valuable because he got to catch major league pitchers, and then he went to the instructional league and he was out in front. Michael told me Israel Pineda was out in front of all the drills, leading them for all the other players. And, you know, he's 20 years old. So I like to watch what Israel Pineda can do. And, you know, this is a big question mark for the Nationals. Is Trace Barrera going to be your catcher? You know, is Wellington Castillo going to make it? Are they going to go trade for somebody else to back up Yan Gomes? Obviously, I'm not saying Pineda is going to be in the major leagues, because you know, that's a few years off. But Jackson Reitz, you know, this is a guy you might see in Rochester. Reitz, Israel Pineda is a guy that's a little bit down the road, but has a lot of potential, a lot of upside. They love leadership skills in their catchers, and he's got it.
All right. And for our last pick, Luke.
I'm going to go with one of the guys that just recently made it onto the 40-man. That's Yohan Adon. It's amazing. He's come from being, you know, in low A in 2019 to being on the 40-man roster. But some of that obviously is a factor of his age and how long he's been in the system. There's some guys that I've been following, they never seem to get out of Auburn. But I feel like this kid could be the next one to make that jump, maybe a jump like Steven Fuentes did. Another one that just recently added on to the 40-man. And I'm tending to skew younger just because I feel like, if I'm drafting, I'm going to draft for the future, not necessarily for this year. That's just me.
Perfect. All right. So for the next part, what I was looking to do was to go through some players that we might be more likely to see in a Red Wings uniform this year. So with the help of the Fangraphs website, I have 3 slides. One is a projection of some possible pitchers we might see, another for infielders, another for outfielders. Obviously, some of these guys are more likely than not, but maybe we can just stick with the same draft format. And if there's maybe we can do a couple rounds on this pitching list of a name you see that sticks out that you think might be a Red Wings contributor this year.
You just want me to pick a guy? Is that
Rick?
Yeah, someone who interests you, someone who you might like as an organizational guy, or for whatever reason.
I mean, I love Javi Guerra, great guy. Consistently like the last man on the roster, it feels like when he's in the big leagues, but a guy who just wants to win. He shows up early, he helps and stays late when guys need it. So many guys on that Nats team have talked about how he has helped them. And you always are like, wait, that's weird. Javi Guerra is helping Sean Doolittle, or like how just being there, talking to guys. He's just a great teammate. Obviously, he's a good pitcher as well. He's a fringy guy. It wouldn't surprise me if you see him up and down 10 times, right? Like that's Javi Guerra. That's the quintessential last reliever there. But if you are going to games, if we are allowed into games, definitely a guy who you could stop in the parking lot and would sign, take a photo with you, all that good stuff.
Great.
Yeah, great questions here. There's a lot of guys that could be in the major leagues or could be in Rochester, and one of them could be Tim Cate. He's a left-hander, University of Connecticut. And I talked to Brad Holman going back to September, looking at what I was talking to him about. And they love the fact that Cate throws inside, which is something that sometimes is difficult for a pitcher to do who's trying to avoid bats. He's not afraid to go after guys, and he's not afraid to go inside with his stuff. And obviously, as you see there, he's got a pretty good curveball. His mechanics were the issue in spring training way back in 2019. Feels like 3 years ago now. So this is a guy that you'll probably see. He's got that really good curveball, can spin it really well, and hoping for good things from Tim Cate.
Great.
I'm going to go with Sterling Sharp. Sterling Sharp is a ground ball machine. And I don't care who you are, that's always valuable because ground balls don't go out of the ballpark. I think that yes, most people are going to remember him when he pitched for the Marlins and he got lit up. But I also think that's just a factor of the pandemic season. He probably wouldn't have pitched in any of the season in the majors. I think with some more seasoning and some more instruction, this guy could be the next Derek Lowe if everything falls his way.
Great.
I'm going to go with another veteran that everyone might be familiar with, and Aaron Barrett. He's a great guy. Famously, obviously, come back from Tommy John, snapped his arm in half. There's that documentary in the works that's being done about him. Just a terrific guy, and one who I believe is now in his last year. He will be a free agent, I think, after this year. There was something weird with service time, but he ended up getting it at the end of the year when he came up briefly. Had a little issue that shut him down towards the end of the year. But he's a guy who could factor in either as one of the last pieces in the Nats bullpen or at AAA Rochester. I think he's probably going to be on that AAA shuttle, similar to Javi Guerra, where they're going to need a roster spot. We talked about Matt LeCroy earlier, and that video of him telling Aaron Barrett, hey, you're coming to the big leagues, and Aaron starts crying. If you don't know what I'm talking about, please look it up as soon as this call is over, because it will just make your day, just tug at your heartstrings. There's Aaron Barrett there throwing. I don't really have much else to say, except it's just a terrific story, and one that, like, you can't help but root for the guy. And there's not too many players as a reporter that I root for, but Aaron Barrett is definitely one of them.
Great.
Getting all emotional here because it's been a tough year, and we're excited to get baseball back. And that's how I feel about the Dakota Backus, the right-hander who got a chance to pitch in the major leagues last year. And it literally felt like, a scene from, Bull Durham or Field of Dreams or something like that, because after he got his first outing or whatever and got the ball back, he said he looked at the ball in his glove on the mound and said to himself, "I made it. I'm in the major leagues." I mean, that's what I would do, but I would never be able to do something like that. I mean, that is just the coolest quote I got from him. And so you kind of pull for him, and he's got a lot of ability, and obviously 29, 30 or whatever is where he is right now. But you'll probably see him hopefully get a chance in the majors, and if not, Rochester be able to show what he can do with his fastball, his curveball, and his slider. So it'll be fun to watch him pitch.
Yeah. I think Dan Mason's on the call. Perhaps if he's with us, maybe we can paint a section of the outfield wall white so he can reenact his white wall ninja from back when he was in rookie ball.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So look up the white wall ninja if you don't remember that from a few years ago.
Definitely.
And you got the picture of it here.
Very well done.
Byron, you stole my guy. That's what I was gonna pick, was Dakota. I've talked about him before, but Steven Fuentes. Now, obviously, there's going to be the big question is how much of his improvement in 2019 was due to, he was dinged for a PED, heptanol. I can't know how to pronounce it. But let's assume that like most people that take the PEDs, he took it for recovery purposes. He turned a corner in 2019 and became a starter. And anytime you can get a starter that can go back to relieving, it's always valuable. I feel like this is something that like I said, a sinker and change it. Mickey's also a ground ball machine, and that's valuable, especially with the Nationals. We're going to be talking about relievers, and if they can find relievers on the cheap, that's going to help.
Great. All right. We'll leave the pitching mix for now. Move over to the infield. I will say some of these guys can move around from the position I have them at here. So don't. So if you're looking at only this, don't assume that we don't have anyone else that can play third base. There's other guys on here that can, but maybe we'll just go around the infield, and you guys can pick a favorite or two off of this list.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about some of these guys on here, so I'll try to stay away from that. Trace Pereira, just a guy who I challenge you to find someone who had a worse year than this guy. The PED suspension, which there's been a lot made of the suspensions and the fact that it's an old, like, Russian doping drug. And, I wonder if this is going to later come out that, oops, we made a mistake here. These guys didn't knowingly take a drug from 40, 50 years ago. It just is an unusual drug to cheat with. But anyway, had some really serious family stuff going on as well this winter. Is a guy that, the Nats really like. He could end up being the backup catcher if they don't sign someone behind Yan Gomes. Otherwise, like you said, he is ticketed for Rochester. He's like most of the guys in their organization. He's more of a defensive first catcher. You just look at him. He's a smaller guy. He's going to block the plate. He's got pretty good catch and throw skills, but he's not a real Muto, right? He doesn't come with this big threatening bat. I think he projects as being a backup guy, probably at the high end. I don't think anyone sees him as an everyday big league catcher. But certainly an organizational guy, a depth guy who very well could be that everyday catcher at Rochester. Like I said, another guy that you kind of pull for a little bit just based on some of the stuff that he's had happen to him over the past year.
Yeah, we got to see Jake Knoll a lot at the end of the year. What was a difficult season for the Nats, obviously at 26-34, and he showed that he can hit, and he was able to do that at the alternate side. And then, he's excited to be back, being able to play on the East Coast. He said it was tough for him in Fresno, and wasn't able to get to where he wanted. But then he finally started to roll at the end of the season. So he's hoping for that same kind of thing. Is he that player like Ryan Zimmerman that gets hot at the end of seasons? But is there a place for him anywhere? And that's why I think if he's going to still play baseball, you'll see him in Rochester, but it'll be fun because he's very, very good at hitting, and he can do a lot of different things, hang in there defensively for you, and one of the guys that you would pull for as a Rochester fan to hopefully get a chance with the Nationals. And unfortunately, the only way that maybe he would get a chance is if there is an injury or if they decide not to go with a deeper bench. But he can hold his own, and so it'll be fun to see how Jake Knowles' season goes.
All right, Luke, any appealing names on here for you?
Well, there's Brandon Snyder. He's never going to be probably anything more than a fringe major leaguer, but what he is a contributor. He's always contributed. He's almost always, he's been on the Nats at the AAA level for 2 of the 3 of the last 4 years, and he just puts up numbers, and as a fan, if I'm a Red Wings fan, I'm being like, this is a guy you're going to be glad to see, day in and day out. He can actually pitch in a pinch. 2019 was a fun season that way because it was more than a few occasions where they had to have position players pitch because they were just getting blown out. But this is a guy that is going to produce. I mean, he may not necessarily be a major leaguer, but he's certainly a quality AAA player.
Great. You guys are up for it. We'll do one more round around the infield and then do one round in the outfield.
Great guy. He's a great guy too. I mean, I don't know. We already did Kieboom and Garcia, so I feel like we're double dipping there, right?
Yeah, we can skip them if we've already done them.
Yeah, we'll just skip them. Adrian Sanchez, kind of like the Brandon Snyders of the of the infield, I guess. Even though Snyder's a first baseman, he was a catcher to start with, and I was actually there the first year he was with Baltimore, so we go way back. But Adrian Sanchez, he's that last guy. He's that fringy roster guy. He's a defensive-minded guy who can run. He's got some speed, some defense. He's never going to be a major league hitter. And so because of that, he's going to struggle to keep a job. He's going to be back and forth. I think he's now the longest tenured Byron, right? Guy in the organization. He's up there.
Yeah. You remember that name for a long, long time. He's been fighting for a spot, and with Wilmer Depot not around anymore. So yeah.
Yes, with Depot in Pittsburgh. I think he might be, don't quote me on this, but I think he might be among there. So the quintessential Nationals organizational player right there.
Yeah, and just to make a point on defense, it's funny you should say that, Brittany, because when I saw him in his first turn through the minors, he was not a very good defensive player. He's one of those, I can't think of another example of someone who got so much dramatically better on defense. I don't know if it's just hard work or if it's just, I mean, he certainly was athletic enough, but he just didn't have that extra oomph. And then all of a sudden, the next time I saw him in the second turn through the minors, he was just dramatically better. And I don't get it, but he's a utility player, and that's exactly what he can do. He can play defense. I've never seen such a transformation before or since.
What's going to be interesting is Cole Freeman. He was playing second base and he can play the outfield. He was in the All-Star game a couple years ago. He played in the Arizona Fall League. They like his short swing, and we're talking about LSU Tigers. There's a lot of good LSU Tigers, with whether it's Andrew Stevenson or Cole Freeman or others. He can hit, and he was slated to be Double-A last year. So I don't know if he'll begin at Rochester, but he's a lot of fun to watch. Great personality, and that's the kind of player that you'll love to watch too, because he can do so many things. Whether it's he's such a good baseball athlete that he can play second place, he can play center field, and because he has that short swing and pretty good speed, his on base percentage is pretty good too.
All right. Anyone else that appeals to you, Luke, or should we skip ahead to the outfield?
I think we should go to the outfield.
All right.
Well, obviously Andrew Stevenson, although I wonder if he's a good candidate to make the 5th outfielder for the Big Nats. But he's always been a good player. But the only knock you can really have on him is he doesn't have a hell of an arm, but that's pretty common among center fielders not named Michael Taylor. Not that Michael Taylor's still with us, but I mean, that, he had a right fielder's arm playing center. But he can shag just about anything. We have some shots that we took at the site from my guy in Arizona where he got nicknamed Spider-Man because it seemed like he was crawling up the wall. I think he's gonna, if he doesn't stick as the 5th outfielder for the Nats, then he'll definitely be a star for the Red Wings.
I'm gonna go Yadiel Hernandez just because he was a 33-year-old rookie, and I think Davey Martinez either cried or he was like close to tears, right, Byron, that day when he came up. So excited for him. From Cuba, had a really tough road because he kind of misplayed his hand a little bit with an agent early on. Kind of got stuck signing much later than a lot of Cuban players do. So he was already behind the 8 ball, but to his credit, like diligently continued to work, continued to kind of not quit like so many other guys probably would have done if they were 33 years old and hadn't sniffed the big leagues. And he finally got his chance this year. Didn't perform particularly well. I don't expect him to be a major league impact guy. I think just looking at this Rochester list reminds you how much the Nationals really needed outfield help at the big league level, because there's nobody on this list that jumps out like, ooh, that can't wait till that guy graduates. They just really are very thin positionally, as we talked about, particularly in the outfield. But Yadiel is just a good story, a good guy. If fans are looking to root for someone, somebody who I think they feel like will continue to get better, doesn't have quite as many reps as somebody his age should have on his body. So they're not super concerned about how he will hold up. But, just a good story overall, not someone who's going to save the Nationals or take Victor Robles' spot by any means.
Yeah, Britt makes a great point about the outfield depth in the organization is not very good. They do have a lot of good guys at single A and double A. So the question we've talked about all night is, are we going to see some of those guys come up all the way? What's the left field line in Rochester? How far is it?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm sure somebody knows, but Nick Banks hit a 3-run shot in the Carolina League All-Star game that I went to. And, obviously he's hitting from the left side. So he went oppo boppo with a 3-run shot. He's going to be fun to watch if he gets to Rochester. I like his power bat, something that, they will covet if they can find any outfielder that can show some power. Nick Banks can certainly do that. Really good friends with Cole Freeman as well. They were having a great time at that All-Star game. And I know it was a long time ago, but that's my recollection of what he'll be able to do. Cody Wilson also is an older outfielder who is running out of opportunities, but Gary Thurman told me last week that he's got a plus arm, and he calls him the best outfielder they have in the organization. A quick twitch guy. He can run, and he takes great angles to the ball. So Cody Wilson will be another good one if he makes it to Rochester.
All right, well, we are just after 8:30, so I think we'll probably wrap up the formal part of our program here. Before we do that, I just do want to promote our next program, which will be next month. It's going to be Red Wings Baseball Through the Lens. That's going to take place on a Tuesday, February 23rd, also via Zoom. We're going to have BJ Germano and Joe Torito, who have been 2 of the Red Wings photographers. BJ Germano primarily in the 90s, Joe Torito primarily in the 2010s. I'll be sharing some of their favorite images and stories from their time as our Red Wings photographers. Definitely want to thank Byron, Britt, and Luke for joining us tonight. I think it was a great talk, a great introduction to the national system. I know I had told you guys 8:30. I'm more than happy to hang around for a few minutes. If anyone wants to chat, you can unmute yourself. Certainly, Britt, Byron, and Luke, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Ryan, thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you.
Looking forward to speaking to you during the season too. Be exciting to have the Red Wings with the Nats. Have a good night.
And again, tonight's session is recorded. It should show up on the SABR YouTube feed in a few days. The slideshow that I had, I'm also more than happy to share with anybody. If you wanted to poke through any of the other players we didn't get to talk about tonight, just shoot me an email and I'll forward you a link to it. Let's see here. We had one question here. Any thoughts on the no inductees for the Hall of Fame today? If anyone had any thoughts on that, feel free to unmute yourself and join in. I know I wasn't overly surprised. I was expecting a bit more of a pickup for the top three guys with a Schilling, Clemens, and a Bonds there, but you know, they pretty much held where they were last year, if not dropped a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think it would happen because the top four were either controversial or they took a lot of steroids.
Softens the blow, but the 4 selected last year will be going in this year, so at least it won't be an empty podium.
Yeah, very true. And then the ballot, of course, gets a couple more guys next year with David Ortiz and Alex Rodriguez that have some steroid connections themselves. Yeah, and Joe notes that apparently after the vote came out tonight, Kurt Schilling released something on social media where he had sent a letter to the Hall of Fame asking to be removed from the ballot for what would be his final year next year, wishing to leave his fate up into the hands of the Veterans Committee as opposed to the writers. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know that there's ever been a time in the past where a player's removed themselves from the ballot, or if that's something that could even happen.
Is there any timeline for the season to start? The minor league?
I don't think that there's a good timeline yet. I know the major leagues still, as of now, claim to be starting spring training in 3 weeks. However, I know today the Arizona Fall League, or the Cactus League teams actually submitted a letter to Major League Baseball requesting a delay of a month. So I find it kind of hard to believe that they'd be able to start on time. Even if they were able to start on time, there's still questions if the minor leagues would start at the same time or not. If it's not official, it seems near official that a single and double A at least will start late. Unclear with triple A. And of course, we still have the issue of the affiliation agreements, where they're not even due back until I believe it's February 10th. So if the major leagues can't even make a minor league schedule until they get those back and figure out what teams are playing. And then, of course, the other question too is, are we going to be able to see any minor league games this year or not?
Sure hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, one would hope that we're getting to that point with the vaccine and additional knowledge and whatnot. But
How does a fan base like Rochester's feel about changing affiliation? Is it interesting seeing a new team, or you miss the ties you've had with your older team?
well, so where are you from, Ed?
I'm from DC,
DC,
Northern Virginia. Yes.
Yeah. So for Rochester, this is our only our third affiliate since 1960. We were with the Orioles for 43 seasons, and then
that's what I remember most.
yeah. And then we've been with the Twins for it's hard to believe that I think it was 17 seasons worth. So it's it's definitely interesting to have to kind of learn a new minor league system, get used to all the players. I know I'm making up that slideshow. I'm like, maybe the Nationals farm system isn't quite as bad as we've heard about, but we'll see. Yeah, and certainly, and Steve notes that the Nats are a better fit. And certainly geographically they're closer than closer than Minnesota. And we'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll be able to provide a good product on the field for us.
Yeah, from the Nats point of view, it's better to have Rochester than Fresno. That was a disaster last year.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I think we will probably wrap up for the night then. Again, thank you all for joining us, and hopefully you guys will join us again next month when we do our presentation on Red Wings photography.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks
All right.
for opening this up to others. I found it a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Ed. All right,
Thank
have a
you.
good night, everybody.